Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, firstly, for inviting me here to join you at the launch of your new framework. And really what I'm going to do today is try to give you, in a very short time, a flavour of what the Cork Area Strategic Plan, or CASP, has been about in Cork over the past 13 years, and some of the values that we think in terms of how it's helped Cork become resilient, and things that might be of interest to yourselves starting out on this journey. Okay. To start with, CASP didn't kind of come out of nowhere. The background really can be dated back to the late 70s, the early 80s, when you would have had a lot of industrial decline in Cork, some major shocks with closures of big employers like Fords and Dunlops and high unemployment. And that would have really prompted a process of public, private and academic sectors coming together, some dialogue around how we could address the situation and attract new development, new companies to the region. And simultaneously to that, back in 1978, there would have been the start of coordinated efforts to plan strategically in Cork with the LUTS, the Cork Land Use and Transportation Study. So going forward from that, if you fast forward to CASP in 2000, the vision of CASP is to provide a framework to enable Cork to become a dynamic and progressive European city region, one that is globally competitive, socially inclusive and culturally enriched. The CASP is sponsored by both Cork City and County Councils, and it's providing a shared vision and strategy for the development of the city region from 2000 to 2020. So it sets guidance on the direction and scale of growth that's needed that will be sustainable and that can enable a good quality of life for all the citizens of the region. It also informs both the county and city development plans and the various local area plans. I'll put them all up rather than one by one. Okay. So in terms of the broad goals for Cork, for CASP, integration of land use and transport, improvements to public transport and infrastructure, developing the economic, social and environmental capacity of the area, and ensuring Cork is attractive to inward investment. And then finally, to reinforce its reputation as a centre of excellence in learning. And then the key elements within CASP, and these would have been reflected through the main policies and goals. The first one is the regeneration of Cork City. That's the city centre area. And a lot of that, I can't go into detail about the CASP here, but the key would have been around the reinvigoration of the Docklands area. The second concept was one of Metropolitan Cork, and that was about taking the metropolitan area of Cork County with the city and trying to develop them as a single entity, planning that growth along the suburban rail corridor, so making that the corridor for growth in Metropolitan Cork. The third element was reinforcing the ring towns and rural areas, so that you would focus on expanding the existing rural towns and not creating dormitory towns. Another key principle, infrastructure-led development. Provision of an integrated transport system that will be high-quality rail network, high-quality suburban rail network, high-quality bus network, completing strategic road linkages, park and ride, pedestrian and cycle facilities, and finally, protection and enhancement of the environment. And then to show you the CASP area, this map shows you the area that it's covered. It's roughly an area that's 45 minutes drivable from the city centre. The population in 2011 of the area is approximately 408,000 people. So what you can see there is the Cork City centre at the core. The city plus the striped area is the metropolitan area, so that's the city and the satellite towns. And then you have the rural ring towns and their hinterlands going out to Mallow, Macroom, Banton, Kinsale, Youghal and Fermoy. Again, I won't go into detail on this, but this kind of tries to visually represent the overall strategy in CASP in terms of the projected growth of the locations that have been identified as strategic growth, employment zones and areas for growth, plus the transport network. Obviously, things change, and in 2008, the strategy was updated. The original vision would have been retained, but the strategy was objected to reflect economic, market and policy developments, to also incorporate the additional population allocations that have been allocated to the region, and it also had an increased focus on an economic and investment strategy for the region. What I wanted to say a little bit now about is implementation structures, because that's something that might be of interest to you going forward with your own framework. The implementation structure, the first one is there's a steering committee which monitors and drives implementation of CASP. It's chaired on a rotating basis by the city and county managers, but obviously CASP can't be implemented by just the local authorities. So the steering committee is made up of a broad representative of local stakeholders. So you would have representatives from Bus Éireann, Ian Road Éireann, the Port of Cork, the airport. Higher education is represented with UCC and CIT. Business interests are represented with the Chamber, the Construction Industry Federation. National bodies such as the NRA, the NTA, the Department of the Environment, Community and Local Government. And I know I'm leaving out somebody, but that gives you a flavour of it's inclusive, it's very representative. The second strand is the policy committee, and this is made up of elected members from both the city and county councils. And the role of this committee is to consider policy issues around the delivery of CASP and to solicit the necessary support from the relevant local authorities for these. We have a number of subcommittees. One of them deals with transport. Again, the membership of the subcommittees, like the steering committee, is local authority plus all the other relevant stakeholders, there tends to be local, but occasionally, and in this case, there would always be NRA and NTA representatives on the transport subcommittee. So its broad mission would be to promote the development of an integrated transport system for Metropolitan Cork and the wider CASP area. And you can see underneath on the left-hand side, there's a number of working groups looking at green routes, performance indicators, parking policy, etc. So that's the way the detailed work is carried out in the transport field. The Economic Development Subcommittee, this is a newer subcommittee. This would have set up in the last couple of years. Again, it's chaired by the county manager. The membership, again, is broadly based, IDA, Enterprise Ireland, UCC, the local authorities, the Chamber. And really what they're trying to do is identify emerging opportunities and issues and constraints and facilitate responses to major issues. So examples of some of the work recently that the Economic Subcommittee have been involved in. The bottom one, Make IT in Cork, that's the response to an emerging ICT skills deficiency. There's a representative group, IT at Cork, that represents the ICT sector in Cork. Despite the fact that higher education were developing various conversion courses, there was gaps for highly skilled ICT professionals, and there was a lot of competition between employers and poaching. So this is an industry-led initiative supported financially by the city and county councils to try to attract the ICT skills that were missing in Cork from overseas and try to raise the profile of Cork and Cork's IT companies as a place that people would want to work and bring in that talent while we're also addressing the supply in Cork. Other examples of projects that have been supported through the CASP Economic Subcommittee. One is Cork Innovates, and that's trying to, I suppose, make Cork a centre of excellence for entrepreneurship and trying to make it the place in Ireland to set up your business. Energy Cork, also a cooperative initiative funded through the local authorities and trying to develop an energy cluster in the area. And again, in this area, the development of the project's been facilitated by the fact that the city and county councils would have both created economic development funds. They ring-fence 1% of the rates in each area to support economic development activities, and some of this is used to support these CASP projects. So going back to this other subcommittees, there's two other subcommittees. There's a monitoring one, which does what it says on the tin, what you'd expect, updates on indicators, flagging areas of concern and possible options. And then the newest one is a strategic messaging subcommittee. And again, broadly representative of all of the stakeholders. They're trying to develop an overarching strategic message about Cork as a place to live, to invest, to work and to study. And again, it's trying to, I suppose, add value to the fact that there's a lot of marketing going on at the minute. It's going on at different levels of Cork, about different aspects of Cork, a lot of messages going out about Cork. And yes, they're not necessarily landing. Cork isn't number one on an international radar. So it's trying to see how we can speak with one voice while not impairing the detailed promotional work that other actors will do if we're all saying the same key messages that will kind of amplify the message that gets out there. And it also, this process, we think, is going to identify areas that need further work, such as economic marketing of the CASP area. So that's, and again, apologies for going quickly through it. Obviously, it's a big subject, so I'm just trying to give you a flavour of it here. And the next question is, how is Cork performing? Now, this isn't necessarily about implementation of CASP. This is with a view to seeing how or if CASP has helped Cork be resilient and help weather the economic recession lately. So what we're going to look at now is just some of the recent reports that would suggest that Cork is weathering the recession fairly well. So it's not just a Cork person telling you Cork is great, because I know that goes down really well. So if you look at the Gateways and Hubs Index for 2012, That would have shown that Cork was behind Dublin and Galway, but it was the third best performing gateway. And the report did note that the effects of the recession were less severe in the Cork gateway than elsewhere. Other interesting things that the Gateway Index report noted, I think, were the high level of new firm formation and the fact that that was uniformly spread across the CASP area. So that's interesting in terms of efforts to redress the balance and between the dependence on foreign direct investment. Cork also, the Gateway also remains amongst the most successful in attracting R&D funding. It would have also performed above average in the labour force quality, so third level education qualifications, the sectoral base of the economy, unemployment, and it was the highest perception of the Cork Gateway as a location for business, for doing business. Cork's economy today, so that just gives you a pen picture of some interesting figures. Over 137 overseas companies employing 22,000 people in the Cork region today. There's networks to help develop real strength in global growth areas of technology, biopharma, energy, agribusiness and tourism. And again, Cork is home to global leaders within these functions and activities. And some of the companies based there, Apple, EMC, VMware, Pfizer and others you can see. Cork still has a diverse industrial base. While it retains some of the traditional sectors, it has also moved along the value chain and has high-value business functions and activities such as design, marketing, finance, R&D and innovation. It also has geographic clusters of export-orientated sectors in food, ICT and pharmaceutical. And I think more significantly, the multinational companies are being complemented by an extensive and growing SME network. Looking at Cork has a well-developed educational infrastructure. UCC and CIT between them have over 35,000 students. Cork has also got R&D poles of excellence such as Tyndall, which is dealing with ICT, IMERC, which deals with the maritime sector, alimentary pharmabiotics centres and others. And I think it's noticeable that in the recent announcements from Science Foundation Ireland about the research centres partnered industry and academia, UCC would have been a partner in all 7 and leading 4, so that we think that bodes very well for future. And I think another interesting thing is that Cork's research institutes are primarily focused on areas relevant to existing industries in the region, such as ICT, electronics, life sciences, food and the environment. So, the value of CASP. Now, again, we're not trying to say that CASP made all this happen, but and also that there haven't been challenges. There certainly have, and there's a lot remains to be done. A lot has happened at a much slower pace than we would have liked. But a number of independent reports have argued that CASP being there has helped Cork cope with the recession better. It's enhanced its resilience and enabled us to come out to the other end, we hope, stronger than if we hadn't had it. And I think some of the key features of CASP that are relevant to yourselves would be the strategic approach. And again, you're hearing it, it's the same message again and again. CASP has enabled us to ensure that the area is developed as a single unit and enables it to become a real driver of the economy. Local leadership, the leadership of the local authorities in particular in this instance has been critical, obviously driven by local authorities but a wider participation. CASP has enabled all of the partners to speak with one voice on CASP issues. And as I said, government departments and national bodies both participate in CASP structures in Cork, but it also is helpful if you are meeting as CASP in Dublin that you are speaking with that one CASP voice. There's a huge credibility that attaches to you when you've all sat together, identified your priority, and you are going and speaking with one voice about it. And I suppose the final point is that it provides a framework for partnership, working, and effective collaboration, a framework for mobilising all of the partners and resources to deliver better, agreed long-term outcomes. And it's a good basis from which other cooperation can progress. I mean, it's even just the relationships that are built in the rooms when you have people together, it has other spin-off effects. And I suppose I wanted to conclude by mentioning a recent report. It was commissioned by ICBAN, written by Michael Parkinson, called Second-Tier Cities in Europe. Now, the research was looking at a series of second-tier cities across Europe and trying to look at their economic contribution to their economies nationally. Cork was one of the areas that they surveyed, and I think when they were looking at, their view was that Cork had played the cards it was dealt very well, that while there were restrictions, they pointed to the personal relationships developed between local government actors and this CASP strategic planning framework as two of the success factors that had helped Cork perform as it had. One of the recommendations from the report is one that I've quoted there. It's that they found that city regions which strategically mobilised and exploited their assets flourished more in the boom years and are more likely to do better in the economic crisis, and that increasing strategic governance capacity to deliver economic place-based policies at city region level must be a key target. So I suppose to conclude, he would have identified 5 drivers of competitiveness in that report, and one of that is strategic governance, but also economic diversity, skills, connectivity, and place quality. And CASP was a framework that brings all of those interests together. So in terms of trying to develop a partnership, a shared vision for making the region competitive and resilient, it's performed very well. So that's all I wanted to say about CASP.